Ahoy there! Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another ship fitting guide for EVE Echoes. In today's video we are going to be finishing off our little mini-series on the T10 Tanky Battleships. We've already looked at the Abaddon, the Hyperion and the Maelstrom, and if you're interested in any of those three battleships, do make sure to check out the description below. If I remember, I will put links down there to those three videos, otherwise you can just search for them here on the channel. And today we're going to be looking at the Caldari Rokh, the fourth and final one of these. Now, I know there were some people who were a little bit concerned I wasn't going to get around to this one. I do apologise. Both December and January have been insanely hectic months for me, but things are really beginning to look up right now. If you're interested in hearing more about what's going on with me, make sure to head over to Patreon. There are a lot of public posts there. You don't have to be a Patreon supporter to read what's going on. I use it kind of like a blog as well. But if you do want to go the extra mile to help support this channel, pledging to support on Patreon is one of the best ways to do so. You can earn yourself some really cool exclusive merchandise, get some exclusive blog posts and videos and things like that. And certainly, if you're pledging at Pirate or higher, you'll also get your name in the stars at the end of future videos. More of that there on Patreon. Anyway, so today's video, the Caldari Rokh. This is a battleship. It's one of the 4 tanky battleships up at tech level 10. It's the last one for us left to cover, so without further ado, let's jump right in. Being a Caldari ship, of course, the Rokh is found in the Caldari state tech tree, and like the other of the tanky battleships, as I call them, you'll find it all the way up at tech level 10 here on the battleship branch. Now, it's interesting that the Rokh actually looks a little bit like the Naga line of vessels. They have a similar sort of silhouette and appearance, and that does really kind of make sense when you look at what the Naga does and what the Rokh does, but we're here to talk about the Rokh, obviously. Now, the name of the Rokh, like many Caldari vessels, the Rokh is named after a particular creature. Most Caldari vessels are named either after animals, specifically birds, or mythological creatures, and the Rokh actually kind of does both. It is a mythological gigantic bird that I think was originally featured in the 1000 Tales Arabian Nights collection of stories. I think it's Sinbad the Sailor who ends up fighting one. In fact, if you've played any of the Final Fantasy series of games, chances are you've fought a Rokh at some point. They tend to be gigantic, hawk-like enemies, occasionally spelt R-O-K-H like you see here, sometimes just R-O-C. Anyway, the Caldari battleship itself, I do really quite like this. It looks like a sort of a brutalist-style office building turned sideways and launched into space. And we do get the really cool Nuguelahuvi Corporation, or however the heck you want to pronounce that, as its base skin. The red ochre is a nice easy one to get and looks pretty cool as well. It does have a panda skin. We don't know how you're going to get this one yet, but I love it and I really, really want it. I might actually skill into large railguns just to get that skin and use it. The Ascension nanocore obviously being luminescent orange, the standard Caldari skin, the Caldari Navy skin, which is what I'm using for the purposes of this video, courtesy of the Caldari Navy NCO core, which you get through faction war games. There is a Wool of Steel available, the Dark Halo was available and hopefully will come back at one point in the future. The Dawn skin looks awesome, the Renaissance skin just looks amazing. I love this thing on my worm. Here on the Rokh, it makes it look like some kind of futuristic handgun, which I love, or shotgun or something like that. The Gurstus Veteran's a little bit bland for my liking, but the NCO makes up for it by making it look like it fits right in with things like the Rattlesnake, the Healer, and the Worm. Even like as we go further on here, there's the Late Night skin, the High Noon, the Sunset, the Thermomagnetic Storm looks pretty badass on this one, and even the Weirkomi, which we don't know how to get yet. This is a skin that sort of a lot of people have asked about. We don't know. There's a lot of different skins and appearance settings for the Rokh. Very popular ship, and I kind of get why, having flown it for a while now. Anyway, looking at the attributes and fittings, like the other of the Tech 10 tanky battleships, it has 8 high slots designed for large turrets. We then have 2 large drone tubes, small, medium or large drones. You're probably going to be launching mediums out of those, all things said and done. You've got 4 mid slots, 6 low slots, 3 of each of the combat and engineering rigs there. Gives you a little bit of versatility. So we've got a pretty nice spread there of slot collections, which allows the Rokh to do some pretty cool things. We've got a massive power grid, 11,232 megawatts. Cargo hold is typical for a battleship of this size. Defense looks a little low on paper at first. If you compare it to the other 4 battleships, it is a little bit lower. The Abaddon, the Hyperion, and the Maelstrom, I mean the other tanky battleships. It is lower overall. However, that lies to you. That's because it's got a very low armor and a very low structure, but it has an absolutely massive shield. And that's kind of the key point here, that as long as you've got sort of tanking modules or things going on there that allow you to do what you want to do, you'll find that that shield tank is incredibly hard to break without sustained, hefty firepower. The capacitor bank is also large. It's a Caldari ship. Of course, it's going to have good capacitors, 11,817 gigajoules, a maximum capacitor recharge rate there of 31.73 gigajoules per second, and the capacitor recharge time is a whopping 931 seconds. That's the time it takes to go from 0 to 100 in ideal circumstances, without anything affecting it like Nosferatu's or capacitor batteries. We then have, of course, a very large signature radius. Like most Caldari ships, the Rokh is larger in its signature radius than most of its contemporaries, so it's larger than the Hyperion, the Abaddon, and the Maelstrom. Scan resolution is a little bit lower as well at 110 meters. Sensor strength we can ignore because it doesn't do anything. Flight velocity, it is the slowest of those four, and with its mass and its inertia, it's also the most cumbersome. Warp speed of 2.0 AU isn't terrible for a battleship, but it's not particularly good either. It's slow, it's cumbersome, it's large, it is a battleship after all. What are we expecting here? As we look into its trait descriptions, though, we start to see what really makes this thing tick. Now, like the Hyperion, the Abaddon, and the Maelstrom, we get a bonus from Advanced Battleship Command. This, in this case, gives us passive shield resistance, 20% shield resistance at full training there, level 5, Advanced Battleship Command. Obviously, this puts it on par with the Abaddon, which has a 4% armor resistance, whereas, say, the Maelstrom or the Hyperion get shield booster and armor repairer boosts, both respectively. Like the others as well, advanced large weapon system is your other skill bonus here. With the Rokh, of course, that's large railgun operation. Advanced large railgun operation gives you an increase of 9% to large railgun damage and an insane 12.5% to large railgun optimal range. That means you can get some truly monstrous long ranges with the large railguns here. Large rifled railguns tend to be pretty useful anyway for this kind of thing. Very good at they've got a very long optimal range to them. Making that even longer means that the Rokh does work surprisingly well as a sniper vessel. It's not to say that you can't make it a brawler. A lot of people sit there and say, well, you know, like, does that mean I can't brawl with the Rokh? No, you 100% can brawl with it. Just, if you're going to use large snub-nosed railguns, I personally feel that the bonuses, the agility rating and things like that of the Hyperion does that same job, but better. The only reason I would ever really use a Rokh over a Hyperion if I wanted to use large snub-nosed railguns is if I just really have never bothered to touch armor like armor tanking skills at all. But in fairness, choosing a ship based on the fact that you haven't skilled properly into the one you should be flying doesn't feel like a recommendation. This is very much a sniper vessel. It's better at sniping than the Hyperion is, but it can still brawl, if that kind of makes sense. The Hyperion can snipe, but it's better at brawling. The Rokh can brawl, but it's better at sniping. And I will showcase that later on, just to kind of make my point. Of course, you could argue that the larger optimal range bonus here on the snub-nosed railguns is there to account for the fact that the Rokh just doesn't have that agility rating like the Hyperion has, so the fact that it can't maintain that optimal range as well is made up for the fact that it's got a longer optimal range. Just, to me, that's very much a sniping bonus. Before we jump into the actual meat of this fitting, I just want to remind you that I am on the Fulmination Content Creator test server here, which gives me 555 in every single skill in the game. This means, of course, my numbers are probably going to be slightly higher than some of you watching this, simply because I've gone all the way up to Expert 5 on every skill in the game, including ones that aren't really relevant to the Rokh. Like, for example, obviously I'm going to have small railguns and medium railguns maxed out, which will give me longer magnetic field stabilizer activation time and things like that. Now, just because I'm on the Fulmination Content Creator test server doesn't mean that I'm going to pull up unrealistic fits. Everything here is available readily in the game currently, so there's nothing like X-types or purple quality loot being used here, and even for the target painters you'll see that I've stuck to the ones that are readily available on the market rather than trying to showcase things with the Halleys, which, you know, yeah, good luck finding those anymore. Even the nanocore that I've gone for here on the Rokh is the Caldari NCO core. Now, this this is actually one of the sort of lower quality of the various different nanocores available for the Rokh. Its railgun damage that I've gone for here is only 16.8, whereas things like the Ascension or the Dark Halo are higher, so you could compensate with things like that. The Caldari NCO core is nice and easy to obtain. You just play faction war games, and it's available at some of the higher tiers there. Obviously, the Gurustus NCO uses the exact same stats here. It just has that different appearance of looking like a Gurustus pirate ship, whereas this gets the Caldari Navy sort of mottled, almost camouflage, although it's a spaceship, so how you camouflage a spaceship with paint, I will never know. But yeah, I went for this one mainly for the appearance, but you can reverse engineer the Caldari NCO for the same effect. But anyway, the fit itself, of course, we're going sniping. That means we're using large rifled railguns rather than snub-nosed. Again, you can use snub-nosed and go for a brawling build if you want. Look basically at what I did on the Hyperion and swap your shield, the armor for shield modules, that kind of thing. Now you can see here that the way that this is fit currently is giving me an optimal range of 91.92 kilometers with an accuracy fall-off of 33.43, which means if I'm sitting at 100 kilometers, I'm pretty much doing maximum damage, and you can push this up ridiculously high with the other things you'll see as we go through the fit here. Tracking speed 2.46 is abysmal. You're going to need to bear that in mind as we go on and look through this. They're large rifled railguns. DPS also kind of lies to you. You see here, this looks a lot lower than perhaps the Hyperion with the snub-nosed, but remember it can apply this from ranges up to 100 kilometers, and it's mainly the fact that it's got a bit of a longer cooldown here that makes this look lower. They do have pretty good alpha damage, obviously not as good as strike cannons, but they do well. So we've gone for a full brace there of 8 large rifled railguns in the top slots. Because we're going for rifled railguns which are going to be hitting from long distances, of course the first thing we're going for here are Republic Fleet target painters. These, again, they're not going to be fully effective at 100 kilometers because of that 34.5 kilometer optimal range. We're going to be well into the accuracy fall-off here. It's why we've got 2 of these. We're going to paint up a target to make its signature radius bigger so that those large rifled railguns apply their damage that little bit better. I've gone for 2 of them. You could go for 3, but I've decided to go for 2 Predator Stasis Weber Fires just in case anything small and annoying happens to get within that sort of 15 kilometer window, at which point I can web it, paint it, and then hopefully either hit it with the rifled railguns, which in fairness it's not likely, but it can be done and it's going to hurt if it does hit, or we're going to let the drones go crazy on them there. Caldari Navy Nespers, again just Caldari Navy because it fits the theme we're going for here, but the drones don't really matter. They're just there to deal with anything that happens to get close. For the low slots for defences here, we've got a Pith C-type large shield booster to help repair any incidental damage that our shields do happen to take. You'll notice I do not have adaptive invulnerability fields here. When I first tried this ship, I loaded up on 2 of those, I sat at 100 kilometers, and I realised all they were doing was sapping my capacitor. I wasn't actually taking damage. So I swapped 1 out, and then realised I still wasn't taking damage. I swapped 2 of them out, and now I occasionally activate the large shield booster just to top myself up if I drop below 95% shield. Yeah, we're talking that kind of low damage here. Remember, the Rokh itself does come with a 20% boost to all of its shield resistances. So we've got 20% EM, 42% thermal, 52 kinetic, and 60 on explosive naturally. If you want to add some additional adaptive invulnerabilities on here and push this up, you can do either with adaptive invulnerability fields or through rigging, as we'll talk about later. Instead though, I've gone for 2 magnetic field stabilizers. These allow me to push that DPS just over the 2000 mark, and when I activate them it shoots it right up. Quick key point here, I've maintained for a while that actually activating these side by side, as in like activating one, waiting for it to deactivate, then activating the next, was the way to go. And it does give you better sustained DPS, but overall if you want a better DPS, yeah, you do actually activate them both at the same time, because the second one that activates is giving a percentage increase on a larger number. So the stacking penalty on these actually gets wiped out by the fact that the second one is giving a reduced percentage compared to the first, but it's giving a percentage boost on top of a boosted number. I use both of these, I quickly activate both of them when I need to delete something really, really quickly. My next two low slots are Eagle tracking computers. These increase the optimal range, the accuracy fall off, and the tracking speed of the turrets, which is how we have that, what was it, at 91.92 kilometers optimal range there. And when you activate these, you can go even further. I think the optimal range boost with both of these activated puts it all the way up to like 167 kilometers for optimal range. Then you've got your accuracy fall off on top of that as well, meaning you can hit from some really quite insane distances, but only for the duration of the tracking computer, which, as you'll see, sadly, is only a 10-second activation time, and considering that the C-type large rifled railguns have a 5.7-second cooldown, means you are only going to get 2 activations. Even with both magnetic field stabilizers on, you're not going to hit a third activation. You get 2 shots off with everything before those tracking computers go on cooldown. Final thing I've gone for here in the low slots is a C-type large capacitor battery. Now, the main reason for this is that the capacitor is not stable. This takes us to a 16-minute 31-second stability. That does kind of lie to you because it's so rare that I use the Weber fires or the shield booster. So it's not 16 minutes, it's actually considerably longer. It's pretty much stable for all it matters. You might decide that actually you don't want that, you want to put a propulsion module in here, or you want something else like some resistances. I like the little bit of capacitor stability there. As the saying goes, capacitor is life. Moving finally into the rigs then, first of all, the ones I think are not particularly controversial here, a capacitor control circuit and a semiconductor memory cell to make our capacitor that little bit closer towards stable, and then a targeting system subcontroller. This just allows us to lock onto targets that little bit quicker. Very nice. It means if we're sitting at range, we can lock onto things and blab them long before they happen to, you know, come close enough to do any risky damage to us. Continuing that theme, a core defense capacitor safeguard there, 20% reduction for the amount of capacitor required to operate my shield boosters. That does make a massive difference on the capacitor there. If I were to take that off, I drop to literally, I think it's about 8 minutes. It really does push things up here, which showcases that if we're not activating the large shield booster, it's not actually a big hit to our capacitor, and we are pretty much stable. Now here I've got a railgun collision accelerator and a railgun burst aerator, and I've just realised I have a burst aerator 4 on there. That whole thing of, oh, I'm showcasing this using only stuff that you can get live. Apparently I'm lying. Yeah, you're not going to get a railgun burst aerator 4, but it doesn't make a huge difference to the DPS. I'm not going to change that and re-record all of this now because of that. Whoops. But obviously a railgun burst aerator 3 would be what goes there. The damage bonus giving me better alpha damage and faster firing time there from the burst aerator just helps. It gives you a DPS boost. And again, some people might swap that out for things like additional range. If you want to do PvP, fleet PvP, you might decide that actually you want to be further range. So having the rigs for additional range on the railguns might be what you're looking for there. You might decide that you want to just alpha everything possible, so you just go for 2 railgun collision accelerators, but for paper DPS, railgun collision accelerator and burst aerator is your best option. Anyway, enough of talking about this, let's actually showcase it in action and see how this rocks. You guys know that I like to showcase my battleship fits in Bad Hair Day, everyone's favourite of the different storyline missions. It's the one that arguably is one of the most challenging. It's good payout if you can do it, but also being based in Caldari territory puts you close to Tama. Yeah, it's probably one of the riskiest ones to do. I think the Rokh actually does quite nicely here because you're so far away from the central point that when people warp in, there's a chance they're warping in nowhere near you. You can pre-align and actually warp out ahead of time. I have genuinely seen people swap out that targeting system rig for a Higgs anchor, so that they can be pre-aligned and accelerating towards a distant object, so they just hit warp and instantly go. Now, what you may have noticed here is I've locked onto everything. I'm going for the frigates first and doing massive amounts of damage to those. I've blapped a couple of them off the grid already. There is an elite pithy manticore here. I do have the magnetic field stabilizer going. Suddenly I get the nice big penetrating hit and it takes it off in one go. I glance, blap. Same again with the next manticore, I just blap it off in one hit. That Corax, I get a couple of nice hits to it. Very much it's just there, gone, and so on. Start with those smallest targets first. They're the ones that tend to fly towards you quickly. Of course, you can zoom out and use the brand spanking new overlay to see which ships are pulling out of formation to get close to you. Target those ones as priority. Blap them whilst they have no angular velocity. When a ship is flying straight towards you, you'll see that, well, it's coming straight towards you. There's no left or right in that. Therefore, the angular velocity is 0, at which point the tracking speed of the turrets being abysmal doesn't matter. Only optimal range and accuracy fall-off matters when you're sniping like this, as long as they're coming straight towards you, which in PvP they might not do, but in PvE they are always going to do. Now you can see that here, like that covert ops, it's trying to launch its missiles at me. I do take a couple of small hits here and there. The capacitor's nice and comfortable, sitting around the mid to high 70s. In this entire run, it doesn't really drop below 75. I use the battery long before I even really need to here, and that, as you can see, is using the tracking computers and the gyro stabilizers, the magnetic field stabilizers, pretty much every time on cooldown. Now, here, I kind of accidentally started firing at the elite Pithy Scorpion. It's not a big threat, it's not really what I should be firing at this point in time, but because I didn't realise what I was shooting at when I started, I've just kind of left it to showcase that, yeah, okay, these sometimes take a bit of time to come down. As you can see, obviously this is another battleship that's got a lot of shields. It's going to take a while to clip through that shield tank. Just about to get through that now. And we'll move into the armour. Now, the Elite Pithy Scorpion here does actually have a shield extender, which is just the most irritating thing ever. It's like, bless it, it thinks it can beat me. It's never going to happen, so it's just going to hold on and irritate the ever-living crap out of me instead. But again, there it is. There goes the shield extender. It's just, oh yay, more HP for me to go through. It's not like I'm taking damage. You can see I've activated the battery as well, just to give my capacitor a little bit of time to charge underneath. We're slowly getting through that Pithy Scorpion, the Elite Pithy Scorpion there. But you can see damage is just minimal. I'm barely taking anything. I am currently parked stationary. One thing I should mention is I'm sitting at about 100 kilometers. It's a little bit further than that from the entry point. I warped in at 100. Every time something got closer than 100, I've aligned myself away from that central point. I used the tactical overlay to basically pull away in a direct line straight from the center point of the mission, the beacon that you warp in at. I got myself to about 105 kilometers away from that. I then hit stop. What I then do is, if something gets below sort of the 95, like that Scorpion's not going to be a problem because it's going to be dead long before anything happens to it, but there is that Blackbird there. I am considering that if that gets a bit closer, I might need to start pulling away. What I do is I just hold onto the engine, the thruster icon above the screenshot button, and I drag that all the way up to 100%. That just starts you moving in a straight line in the direction that you're facing. I'm not actually doing it here, because I'm still taking pretty much no damage. There we are, going to activate absolutely everything, and go to the magnetic field stabilizers. Do I showcase here what the actual optimal range and that is on this thing? I don't know. Either way, you can see I'm blapping through everything, because I've got like 160 kilometer optimal range, doing about 2,500, 2,700 DPS, somewhere around there. You just kind of hit things, you hit them hard, and you watch them disappear. I've used the capacitor battery just to keep my capacitor charged up. I did use the shield booster there for a few cycles just to get myself back to 100%, because, oh, there was a little bit of red showing and we can't have that. But as you can see, we're right back up. The capacitor is still nice and comfortable. Our shields are full. We're just sitting here comfortably, sniping away at everything as it tries to approach. It can be a pretty dull playstyle for me personally. I'm not a big sniper fan when it comes to this kind of stuff. It's probably one of the easiest and safest ways of playing Eve Echoes, so if you do want to be doing stuff and just, you know, as I said, if you want to align to a gate or a station or something doing this, put a Higgs anchor on and then be moving at 70% of your top speed at least. You won't pull too far away from anything that's coming towards you, but you can warp instantly the second you just hit warp. So if anyone jumps in on you, you can warp to safety like a little chicken. I say that, but I'm not mocking. I get it. You're in a big expensive battleship. You don't want to risk it. You might be able to blap someone if they come. If you see an interceptor warp in at 0, they're going to warp out. At which point you warp to safety. But if they were to turn and try and fly towards you, lock on and blap them. It's really quite simple. That's a bad interceptor pilot. Most people won't do that. Anyway, I'm at that stage of the video now where I am rambling as ships explode in the background. Not much is really going on, but I think I've showcased quite comfortably this ship has no problems clearing this kind of content. There are ways that you can use it to comfortably avoid PvP, so if you're in Lowsec, there it is, 167km optimal range, nearly 60km accuracy fall off, it's just insane. Yeah, if you are in a PvP area, obviously here, Obochi is 0.4, I could be jumped, someone could scan me down and jump me if I weren't on fulmination, so I'm keeping an eye on local, but you could put a Higgs anchor in and, you know, comfortably warp away nice and easily. Easy build to do that kind of thing with. For PvE, this is probably one of the best of those 4 tanky battleships for clearing solo PvE content like this. As I said, the playstyle's not my personal choice, I much prefer the up-close and personal brawling, but there we go. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. You might be big on sniping, this might be your playstyle, nice and chill and relax and sit in Discord and talk to your buds. That's an equally valid way of playing. Anyway folks, thank you for watching this one right the way through to the end. Remember, jump over to Patreon to get your name in the stars. Otherwise, happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.